Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Katie Weaver Show. This is Katie. I'm your host. I'm so happy to be here. I think this is the first time in my history of being on 1-2 Radio, so I think about 13 years now, that I have ever missed 4 weeks in a row. In fact, I told my husband I think this is probably the first time I've missed 4 weeks in a year, let alone in a row. So, wow, I'm really, really glad to be back. Uh, it started out with being sick. I had, I guess, the flu-ish. But then also went to the doctor and discovered that my thyroid labs are greatly out of whack. So unless you understand thyroid labs, this will mean nothing, but my TSH was over 9. And the acceptable number for that is about 3. So with the TSH, it's kind of like golf. The lower number is better, right? So that's like an unheard of number. It's why I've been so tired the last while. Now, thyroids kind of suck in the fact that they take a long time to balance. So it's just going to take the time it takes, and hopefully we can, make it cooperate. But so for right now, I'm still a tired guy. But at any rate, and then the third week I was traveling. I went to Salt Lake with Christy and Rhonda. They had bought me for Christmas a ticket to a Brandy Carlisle concert. So if you know who Brandy Carlisle is, you know how amazing that probably was. Whew. And it was taxing when we got there and finally climbed an absolute mountain to get to our seats. We were at the second row from the top of the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. So the Delta Center is where the Utah Jazz play. It's where I remember their name, Avalanche, I think. Anyway, so it was a production to get there, but oh my gosh, it was a full house. And Brandy had that entire audience eating out of the palm of her hand. I've been to a lot of concerts in the last year, and one frustration we have experienced multiple times is people who just talk, sitting near you that just chat and talk and laugh and stuff all the way through the whole thing and make it hard for you to hear and stuff. Man, there was none of that at Brandy Carlisle. It was just, you could have heard a pin drop in there when she was speaking, and it was just awesome. She's so great. Um, but because we were so close to the top, I noticed that there was a skybox near us that had no one sitting in it. And when I got miserable in my chair, I had climbed the rest of 4 stairs up to get to the very top of this enormous establishment. And I thought, what? I mean, the worst they can do is kick me out, right? Because those were these really comfy, plush, awesome chairs to sit in. So I just went and sat down. I watched ushers walk around me several times. I kept thinking at some point somebody might come tell me I can't sit here, but they never did. And in there, because you're looking through this big glass panel thing, it was like the whole place was magnified, which was extremely cool. So anyway, that was an amazing experience. But one of my biggest takeaways from that trip actually was our Uber driver. Our Uber driver uh, was clearly Middle Eastern, but I didn't know where he was from. But we got in the car and I was sitting up front, and he was super friendly. You know, you never know with Uber. Sometimes your drivers are like, don't talk to me. I won't talk to you. This is a silent Uber experience. Right? Not this guy. So I said to him, I said, so where are you from? And he said, Afghanistan. Oh, wow. I said, okay, wow. And he said, yeah. He said, my family are refugees. I said, okay, wow. So we talked a little bit about Utah, and we were talking about music. And because he was asking us about, the concert we'd been to, and he wasn't familiar, he said, there's a lot of US artists whose music I like, but I can't really follow the lyrics very well. It's just too fast for me in my brain. But he said, I really like world music. I love African rap. Uh, and I was like, oh, that African, like high beat rap stuff is amazing. We were talking about it, and he turned on his favorite song, and we listened to that for a few minutes. And then he said he was like scrolling through his playlist at a stop sign, and he's like, "See, I have music from all over the world." He said, "This is my one of my favorite songs right now from my hometown." And of course, is the music from Afghanistan versus the music from Africa versus the music from the U.S. all have very different beats, different chords and things, just all different, all beautiful and interesting. But so he started playing the song for us, and he said, "This is a protest song because about our flag, because the Taliban took our flag, and now we only can legally fly the Taliban's flag." And so this song is about missing our flag and what it stands for, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then I said something about it scares me that something like that could happen here. And he kind of looked at me funny and he said, "That is happening here." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "It's a very scary thing for someone like me who is a refugee, just trying to put a life together." And he's married and has a little girl uh, in this country right now because everyone thinks that I'm here illegally. And he said a lot of people don't seem to understand that citizenship is a process that takes years. He said there's nothing we can do to just snap our fingers and be citizens now. He said it takes years. And he said, even though we're following all the rules and we do all the things, he said, I'm scared to death every day that I'm going to be torn away from my family, that I'm going to be torn out of this country. He said, I can't go back. He said, I don't know what would happen to me. They can't send me back to Afghanistan. He said, I wouldn't live through that. He said, I don't know what's going to happen to me. It was a really, really sobering conversation to visit with folks like that who are doing the best they can, the only things they can, really, and they don't know what else to do. This guy works full time and drives Uber at night and on the weekends to be able to put a roof over his head, his wife, and his child. He's doing everything he can. But it was an interesting conversation. It was honestly the whole trip was fun and the concert was awesome, but that conversation stuck with me more than anything. Very sobering. Pretty good look at where things are at right now for so many people. It's sad and scary. So I'm thinking about him and his family and hoping that they stay safe, without a doubt. So then last week, I was supposed to come back live. I was set to. I was about halfway through publishing Luminous, and my internet conked out for almost, well, until late into the evening. There was just not a thing I could do. We just had nothing. So I again had to bag out on my show. I was like, okay, what's the universe trying to tell me right now? Go lay on the couch? Probably that. I've been doing a lot of that. But luckily, I have an amazing husband to take care of me and dogs that really all they wanted to do was cuddle anyway. So here we are. We did go over the weekend to Boise to see the kids and celebrate Matea's birthday. So that was great. We had a lot of fun with them. And here we are. Right, Land of the Free, Suzanne. He also told us that he has completely quit using social media because immigration will check his social media when he goes in for meetings, and he's afraid that no matter what he posts, it could be misconstrued some way. So he and his wife have completely eliminated social media so that it's just never going to be a question of them saying something that could be twisted into something untoward. He had mentioned that he feels like he does not have any freedom of speech because anything he says could be twisted in a way that could hurt him in some way. Yeah. Anyway, all that being said, I'm glad I'm back, and I apologize I was gone for so long. There have been multiple times since I've been doing this show that I had surgery. Didn't say a word about it. and was back the next week. That's how I usually operate. Not this time, though. But there was no surgery, just illness. But I still felt like I was playing hooky somehow. But I have to tell you, some of you might have noticed, I'm not live on 1-2 Radio, and I'm not sure why. I can't connect. So I didn't have time to troubleshoot that today, and I'll probably have to get some help on that. So we're just on YouTube today. So, with all that being said, let's start getting into some interesting stuff. So, Luminous this week. Luminous finally came out this week. Poor Kelly and Christy every week. Are you going to go live? Do you want my stuff? Ah, no? Yes? I don't know. But they hung in there with me, which I appreciate. I was thinking about spring in the scope of a fresh start. In the Daily Dish this morning, I always pull some cards for some inspiration, and one of the cards was moving on. And I thought that was an interesting card because in the spring, there's always kind of this inclination to spring clean, to de-junk, to declutter, to get rid of the things that you don't want anymore, right? That aren't serving you anymore. So I thought it was interesting that the moving on card came up. You might find yourself wanting to move on from some things, maybe some old beliefs. Could be a job or a person, a place, an attitude, a habit. Totally up to you to decide. And if you don't, and you're happy with where things are at, rock on, of course. But this does feel to me like a spring where some of us are maybe going to clean house a little bit. And that's okay. That's how it should be, right? All right. So I was thinking about it from the sense of divination, because this feels to me like a time where it would be fun to pull out your stuff, you know? We are getting very close to the spring equinox. Maybe it's time to pull out some of your old divination tools. Maybe it's time to learn something new. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. I thought that would be a fun way for us to really dive into March. So I called the episode of, or the edition of the magazine, The Spring Forecast, Divining the Path Ahead. And by the way, my crows are back. That's right. This morning I got out of, or not this morning, last week I got out of the car from running an errand, and guess who was sitting up in the trees yelling at me? And my God, those crows seem big. Scott said, for a minute he said, I thought they were ravens. They're enormous. They are enormous. They're just big, fat, happy crows. There's actually there's 3 or 4 of them. I think 4, but my main two are definitely here. And then there's a couple others that maybe were their babies or other hangovers. I don't know, but we've got a good crew and a bunch of magpies too. And then a bunch of little brown birds that hit the feeder in big bunches. So they'll, like just a few minutes ago, like 8 of them just hit the feeder hard and then they're all gone again. Like they all grab one bite of cat food and they're off. Anyway, so that's my probably most exciting news. I arranged my spot on the couch so that I have a great access out the window to the crows. So I'm mostly just creeping on them most of my time now. That and watching college basketball, because you know I love college basketball and it's March Madness soon. Not yet, but we're creeping into it real quick. Oh, and I love every second of it. You know this. Okay, so I wanted to talk about divination. We are going to do a tarot spread. You can use tarot cards. You can use any other cards, oracle cards. I'm going to use psychic tarot per normal because I'm just really super predictable like that. But we'll get into that when we get a little further in here. So we know that humans have always predicted, right? They've always predicted. We always study patterns. We always look at the stars. We've always looked at the weather. We know that divination has existed in so many ways, like leaves in a teacup, or the fall of cards, or the swing of a small stone on a string, or a needle on a string, and so many other things. So, we're going to talk about three classic forms of divination that are really simple, that could be used to take a look at what the spring equinox holds for you, or this period of spring equinox to summer solstice. I really like to break it down into those quadrants, just from one turn of the wheel, one significant turn of the wheel to the next. Now, you could do that from to every turn and actually, have, I want to say 9 readings. Yeah, it might be more than that within a year, but I kind of like this 3-month, 90-day space. So that's what we're going to work from today. So tarot. Tarot is a deck of stories. Now we know tarot cards are treated like fortune-telling tools or, divination tools, but tarot decks appeared in 15th century Italy. They were used as playing cards in a game called tarocchi. I was raised in a religion where uh, face cards, which tarot cards essentially were the original face cards, are unacceptable. I was raised that they are of the devil and they're evil. Now, interestingly, that's not what my parents raised me to believe. My parents played cards. I was raised playing cards, but the religion I was raised in did not. And we were in trouble more than once at girls' camp for bringing face cards because they were very frowned on. I had friends who could not play cards with you because they weren't allowed. They could play the hell out of Uno, but they could not use face cards because that was evil. I was always curious about why. Reading this article today, or the article that I used to draw from today, kind of made me go, oh, okay, this is starting to make more sense to me. This is where this nonsense originated from. Okay, I got it. Yep, that kind of situation. Okay, so the early decks had pretty much the same structure we see today: numbered cards, trump cards, and the major arcana. Well, the trump cards that became the major arcana. So in the 18th century, tarot began to take on the more mystical reputation. Readers started using these cards to study the imagery, connect to astrology, alchemy, and ancient philosophical traditions. And the more tarot that you're used to now was starting to be born. So as you know with tarot, the cards don't tell you what will happen, but they reveal themes, patterns, and possibilities, things for you to watch out for, things that may give you a little nudge into helping you make a decision, knowing what you know combined with what the cards are telling you. Now we know cards like the Tower could reflect upheaval or a sudden truth. Nobody wants the Tower card. But the Tower card, just like the Death card, is a card that we may all experience at some point, and they don't necessarily mean that something terrible is happening. There's lots of good upheaval. There's lots of good sudden truth, though it may create some pain in the moment. Then again, it may not. The star often signals hope and healing. The Fool represents beginnings, leaps of faith, and stepping out onto a brand new path. When you sit down with a tarot deck, you're entering a conversation with symbols. That's what a lot of divination is, right? Some of it has more clear-cut boundaries, some of it doesn't. I'm a big fan of combining what works for you, or even designing your own. That's what doing things like designing a set of bones does, is gives you an opportunity to divine your own or design your own. Okay, for a 3-month forecast for tarot, And I'm going to go through this in more in depth in my musings, so or in the tip of the week. So we'll get there, but you're going to look for the coming month, the challenge or the lesson ahead, the opportunities waiting to unfold. That would be a very simple 3-month forecast. We're going to go into a deeper one. Or the seed card. And I love this because many times I've talked about blessing your seeds, starting some seeds and speaking into them, like some literal seeds, speaking into them what you anticipate or hope for them, or what you hope for yourself, and tend those seeds as a symbol of what you're growing within your life. So shuffle your deck and ask, what should I plant this spring? We're not talking about plants, literal ones. We could be talking about an idea, a mindset, or a project that's worth nurturing over the next few months. Obviously, you know this. Sometimes the message is really practical. Sometimes it's really emotional and draws some deep stuff up that you may or may not want to work with. But we also know that the cards will land where they're supposed to. Anyone who's ever worked with cards, be it tarot or oracle, knows that the cards have an uncanny way of landing where they're supposed to land. And just like when you pull out a card that you wanted and another card comes with it, or when you're shuffling a deck and a card literally flies out of the deck, the cards will land where they're supposed to land. Then it's up to you to make the interpretation and move with it. So that's tarot. And again, we're going to talk about a way bigger reading here in a few minutes, but let's keep moving in the article. So tea leaf reading, these are messages in the cup. This is tasseography. I love tasseography. I love it with tea leaves. I love it with coffee grounds. I love this. This became popular in the 17th century Europe when tea and coffee were really spreading through the continent because of international trade. We're getting tea from the Orient. And they were practicing different forms of divination by interpreting patterns in melted wax, wine sediment, molten metals dropped in cold water. But tea leaves, all the ladies were drinking their tea, right? So this turned into kind of a fun and interesting way to divine the future. Now you have to do this with loose tea leaves, obviously. We're so big on our tea bags now that you have to change the way you're doing things. So you literally drink the tea. So you put your tea, however much you're planning on using, into a cup of hot or boiling water. You swirl that, you drink it. Now you don't drink the leaves, right? Like, at all. Back then, you probably would here and there because they didn't have tea bags. This was a different kind of consumption. But as the loose tea leaves settle in the cup, they start forming shapes and clusters that you can interpret. This is very fun. If you've never done this before, why the hell not? But if you have, maybe it's time to try it again. This a lot of times was an informal setting. Kitchen tables, gatherings of friends, just quiet moments after dinner. Even people who didn't consider themselves to be a reader may glance at their tea leaves and see something interesting and give them a smile, right? So after you drink a cup of loose leaf tea, the remaining tea leaves are swirled gently in the cup. The key is to leave like a tablespoon of tea in there or a little less. You got to have a little bit of liquid so that you can give it a good swirl. So give it a swirl while you ask a question. Now, the questions in tea leaf reading are not usually yes and no's. They're usually more of a what do I need to know about, or what path is useful in, or you might not ask a question at all and just swirl your leaves. So the rim represents a near future. So again, you're going to give it a good swirl, so those leaves are going to move all around, all through your cup. This is not just in the bottom of the cup, right? So your little teacup, keep it on the saucer because you might spill a little, but you're going to give it a really good swirl around so that your tea leaves move. So anything near the rim represents near future. You're looking literally for shapes. This is like laying on your back watching the clouds, right? And going, I think that one looks like a worm, and that looks like a Pegasus or whatever. Similar function in tea leaves. Now, the middle of the cup reflects events unfolding in the coming weeks or months. So it's something to know about and pay attention to, but not something that is emergent right now. The bottom of the cup speaks to deeper influences or longer term themes. This is where you may see something that really speaks to the root of the situation or something that is an ongoing situation within what you're seeing in the upper hemispheres of the cup. Then you interpret the shapes that you see. Perhaps a bird represents news, or maybe to you a bird represents freedom. It's your reading. There's no wrong answer. This is really personal to you, to what comes up to you. Now, occasionally, maybe you'll see an image that maybe it definitely looks like a fork, but you have no reference to what that would mean. Then by all means, get on the internet, do a little search, meditate on it, think about it. But trust yourself first. A heart could easily symbolize relationships. A road or a path could suggest travel or a journey ahead. One thing to do is look at your cup, get your first impressions, and then look away. Just kind of the way you would cleanse your palate, right? Look away, maybe even turn the cup in a little different direction, and then look again. Look a few times from different angles. You might be surprised at what changes or what solidifies for you about what you're seeing. So again, you have to trust yourself. I'll also tell you that this gets easier the more you do it. After you've read a few cups, you start going, okay, I've seen that before. I know what that means for me. So here's a simple spring tea ritual. This would be on a quiet afternoon or morning or whenever you have some space and time that you're not in a big rush. So make a cup of loose leaf tea and sit somewhere peaceful. With your tea, because I've come across this a few times myself, personal opinion, I think this works a lot better with just leaf tea. If you've got stuff that has like parts to it that are more like sticks, like chai that has a lot of spices in it and stuff, I find that much harder to read and less, I don't want to say less accurate because that's probably unfair, but I find it to be less authentic. Let's say it that way. So you might play a little bit with what kinds of tea you're drinking, or at least using for this exercise and what works the best. Personally, I like peppermint leaf tea for this. But again, you may find something else you like better. As you drink your tea, think about the next few months and what you're hoping to create or experience. When the tea is finished, and again, you're going to leave a teeny bit in there. If you forget, just pour a tiny bit of water in there, but you've got to have a little bit of liquid to move the leaves. So when you're done, turn the cup, like I said, and read the leaves. A good question is, what should I be paying attention to right now? Or what should I know about this situation? Crafting your question's important, but again, you don't have to have a question either. You could just turn the leaves and see what they say. But I really hope you play with tasseography because it's fun. And if we're not having fun here, what the hell are we doing here? Right? I'm not interested in boring. I'm not interested in routine. I'm interested in things that change up, that are different, that are wild. I don't want to get bored. All right, let's move on to pendulums. You've all probably have a pendulum. You've probably all played with a pendulum. These are really simple divination tools, and they've been used for centuries. From locating water sources to making spiritual inquiries to determining what the gender of the baby is, that's been used for centuries too. When I'm going back to girls' camp again. So when I was a teenager in church, you started at 12 in the young women's program, and that meant you got to go to girls' camp every year. And girls' camp wasn't a lot; it was like 3 or 4 days. Um, Maybe that is a lot. Probably for the directors and the leaders, it was plenty. But uh, we stayed in tents, and there was a campground that was owned by our church, and we went there. We stayed in tents, and there was a lot of activities that were pre-planned, but you had quite a bit of downtime too. And like I said, we got in trouble at girls' camp multiple times for having face cards, and part of that might have been because we were gambling, and that was also frowned on. But you know, we were teaching the girls how to play poker and gambling with penny candies. And I'm going to stand on business that all girls should know how to play poker. They should. That's all. But something else that the girls were doing, and I didn't start this, someone else did. We did get in trouble for it, but um, they were using a needle and thread to hold over your wrist to determine how many babies you were going to have and what their genders would be. And it was accurate. It was wild. The directors, or our camp leaders, who eventually made us stop doing this because they decided it was not good, uh, they let us do it to them, and it was right every time. And these are women that had already had their babies. But it also makes me laugh that in a group full of Mormon girls, what were we doing? We were determining how many babies we were going to have and what their genders would be. Because by God, that was the important thing. All right. So a pendulum can be a crystal on a chain, a ring on a thread, any kind of a small weight suspended from a string, right? The only thing it can't be is with a string so long that the string bangs on the suspending part. So you either have to wrap that around your finger to shorten it, or you just need to have something that's the length that you want. But you got to be careful about that. I see people do this and it's a big mistake. You don't want any part of that chain or string to be banging against itself. The pendulum itself and the string that is suspended from has to be completely free hanging. Otherwise, you're going to mess it up. Lillian said, my brother-in-law, while dating my sister, taught me at age 9 to play poker. Yeah, my dad taught us all to play poker. Or I'm pretty good at poker. And years ago, my sister's husband, now ex-husband, um, guy was a genius on paper. But as far as like social skills, life skills, he really lacked. And he was used to being the smartest guy in the room, or at least he thought he was. And he always thought that he was smarter than me. Always thought he was smarter than me. I've never taken an IQ test. I don't know what my IQ is. I don't really care what my IQ is. It doesn't matter to me. But to him, it was such a big deal what his IQ is, how smart he is. And with him, uh, he always wanted to play games so that he could beat us and, prove how smart he was and that the rest of us were just these hicks that didn't know shit. He graduated from Penn State and he thought that meant that he was smarter than everyone else. And maybe it did. I don't know. But I beat him at a lot of games over the years that were upsetting to him. And as you can imagine, entertaining as hell to me. But poker. It was a huge one. Every year for his birthday, he wanted to have a poker tournament. We all had to buy in. Every year I would beat him. Every year. And every year when he'd plan this party, he'd point right at me and say, "You're not going to fucking win this year." Oh gosh, Nick. Every year I would beat him. And he would be so mad. Like it would ruin his birthday. I don't know what to say. I was raised playing poker, Nick. I'm also a professional psychic. And you don't have that good of a poker face. Okay, well, that's all. Anyway, back to pendulums. The concept behind pendulum divination is what's called the ideomotor response. It's the same kind of subtle movement that allows a Ouija board planchette or dowsing rods to move. I'm not endorsing Ouija, you know I'm not. I've never endorsed Ouija because of space clearings I've done where I've seen some scary shit because of Ouija use from people who didn't know what they were doing. Just don't on Ouija, just don't. It's just don't. But talking about dowsing, and of course, dowsing is something that is still done to find water. If you're going to dig for a well, it's something that's still done to find oil, and it's something to use to find other things. We used to take dowsing rods to the places that we were digging for crystals and douse for looking for stones before we dug. With mixed results, but that's because, we were digging on a mountainside that was full of crystals. So it was a little hard to nail it down. There was one time, well, not one time, but one particular time I can think of at Crystal Park, Montana, which is literally the top of a mountain that is just teeming with clear quartz, smoky quartz, and amethyst. And I had been dowsing, and I just felt really, really strongly in this one spot. Like, there is something here for me. Oh, and I dug and I dug and I dug. And then Scott dug and he dug and he dug, and we pulled an absolutely gorgeous piece of smoky amethyst out of the earth. And I knew I doused that one, but it was mixed results most of the time. But at any rate, uh, dowsing rods now typically are a copper rod that you hold in your hands loosely, or some of them have like a kind of a handle on them so that they can really move on their own. And then you walk really slowly around while you're asking your question. And when the rods cross, then you stop, and that's your spot. Now you can step back and double check that spot over and over or whatever you want to do. But they also used to douse, and I'm sure some people still do, with a forked stick. They just find a stick that's forked, they hold it out in front of them and walk slowly along asking their question, and at some point the stick will go down. And it's an interesting feeling because you don't have any control over it. It just moves. With dowsing, you can't, I mean, I'm sure you can fake it all you want, but if you've felt that feeling of that motion, you know you didn't do that. It just happened. Interesting stuff. So, the ideomotor response are tiny unconscious motions in your hands to create gentle swings of the pendulum. You can, my brother in law did this to me because he also didn't like the pendulum uh, beating him at cards because that happened too. So he would hold my wrist really still, like, you can't move at all. Can you make that pendulum move? And I still could. Not that I was trying. Again, you're not trying to move anything. You're trying to hold completely still, but you will have tiny unconscious movements that move that piece. So the pendulum acts as a translator for information already stored in your subconscious mind. That's why pendulums and dowsing are considered to be safe versus something like Ouija, where you're asking someone else to potentially enter your field. That you don't know who you're inviting in. You think you know who you're inviting, but you don't know who's coming. And that's the problem. But that's why pendulums and dowsing are considered generally safe, because it's literally just coming from within you. So pendulums have appeared in European dowsing traditions, Chinese geomancy practices, and various spiritual traditions around the world. Really common for yes or no questions, energy checks, intuitive guidance. So as you know, when you use a pendulum, you're going to hold it above your hand, such as this. I always like to have my elbow either tucked into my side or flat on a table or my desk. You hold that pendulum above your hand and you're going to ask it to show you yes. And it'll think for a minute and kind of swing for a minute and it will go whatever direction is yes. Then you'll tell it to stop and it will stop. And it'll start thinking. And when it thinks, it kind of does this really tiny, minute bounce. Then you'll tell it to show you no. And then usually it'll go the opposite direction. So for me, my yes is almost always clockwise. And my no is nearly always counterclockwise. Maybe usually swings for me just back and forth like this, but you'll have to ask your pendulum. Just because one pendulum gave you answers a certain way doesn't mean the next one will. Sometimes they don't. So you need to ask every time. So pendulums respond best to questions that explore direction. Things like, would pursuing this opportunity benefit me? Is this the right time to make this decision? Should I gather more information first? You can use pendulums to find things. I saw a lady in the grocery store one day with a pendulum, and she was holding it out over various pieces of fruit to pick the ones she wanted, which I thought was pretty cool. People use pendulums to decide which supplements they want to buy. Things like that. The uses of pendulums is immense. We should do a pendulum show again sometime soon and populate a huge list of ways to use your pendulum. You'd be amazed at things that people do that are actually very smart. Okay. Now let's keep moving. I don't want to run out of time. In Refeminist History, Kelly's article is about the pack horse librarians. Appalachian bad bitches on mules. I love it. I love it. And I loved this article, but leave it to Kelly. Appalachian bad bitches on mules. Yes, ma'am. All right, let's talk about the 90-day tarot spread. So this, of course, would be spring equinox to summer solstice. So it's a 7-card reading, and we're going to do it. So I'm going to do a collective reading. So this is a reading just for all of us, for the collective. Lillian said, Ouija was a big thing when I was a kid. It worked, but I wonder what it unleashed. And I've probably told this story before, but I have some cousins that were like brothers to me. Their mom was my mom's cousin. No, their mom was my mom's aunt, but they were raised like siblings when they were kids. And so they were really close. And so we were close with these cousins and they were boys and I don't have any brothers, right? So not living. And so these cousins, Eric and Brian, were very close to us. And my Aunt Roma was a single mom and just doing the best she could with 4 kids, 2 teenage boys, and then 2 daughters as well. And the boys were a little rough. Brian was the oldest and he was a little rough. And I love Brian. I love him to this day. But as a teenager, he was a big handful. Like a lot of boys are, whatever. But the kids wanted a Ouija board. They'd been begging for it. So she finally took him to the store and let him buy one. And their house had a little camper out back that the kids used as their clubhouse. They hung out in there all the time. So they'd been out there playing with the Ouija board. And suddenly one of the kids ran into the house and told my Aunt Roma, there's something wrong with Brian. And she ran out there and Brian was beating the ever-living hell out of Eric. Had him on the ground, punching him over and over again in the face. And the other kids that were there said they were just playing with the Ouija and that something changed. Brian, his whole face changed. and he just attacked Eric for absolutely no reason and beat him up bad. It was terrifying. And obviously, she threw away the Ouija board, but she'll tell you that Brian wasn't the same after that. Um, it took a long time. And that's just always really stuck with me with Ouija. Now, obviously, I've seen some shit with house clearings and Ouija boards that make me always tell people no Ouija, but that's a big one, a big reason why I feel that way. Okay, let's get back to our reading. So if you're playing along, get your deck out. I'm going to shuffle 3 times. Again, I'm asking for a collective reading for the bulk of us, all of us, from now until this summer solstice. So we're looking for the next 90 days of what we need to know. Okay. Now, when I pull my cards, I like to just fan them and ask the question and pull the cards that feel right. That's how I always do this. And I don't flip any of them over until I start the reading itself because I get distracted otherwise. So you can do it your way if you have a way you like better, but this is how I usually do mine. So I'm going to ask the first question. The first question, the first card is the theme of the season. What overall energy will guide the next 90 days? Kind of feel like I'm taking a very scary test right now. Okay. The number 2 card is what is emerging? A new opportunity, idea, direction beginning to take shape. So what's emerging? Okay, the number 3 card, what requires attention? Something that may need care, healing, or focus. This is always a really important card because we're so quick to ignore the bigger elephants in the room of things that need our attention, especially when your hair is on fire over something specific in your life. It's really easy to neglect things that are in your face that you just don't want to face up to. So make sure that you're putting your cards in the direction here that you're getting from the layout. Okay, so number 4 got left off. Look how good I am. God damn it. Okay. Oh, no, it's not. I just got my numbers off. Okay, never mind. All right. So we'll alter this. I'll make a new one. Sorry about that. Number 4 is the turning point. So it's going to be labeled 5 on here. So number 4 is the turning point. That's the moment or decision that may shift the direction of the season. Number 5, that's the center point. That is what to release. Old habits, fears, or attachments that could hold you back. And it goes right in the center. All right. Number 6 is what to nurture. Something worth investing energy in. And I like this card a lot because honestly, I've had to get better about protecting my energy. And this is definitely a part of that for me. And number 7, or 8, if you're looking at the graphic, where you may be by summer. This is where we might expect to find ourselves. So remember, this is a collective reading. This is for all of us. When you do it, you could do it for yourself. All right. So starting with number 1, the theme of the season. The card I pulled is Love Begins. So the theme of the season would be nurturing relationships. This could be romantic relationships, but it could also be leaning into community, people around you, your friends, your family, your neighbors, coworkers, But that's the theme of the season is is how we can use love to continue to usher something better in. All right. Number 2, what is emerging? Material and spiritual prosperity. This will bring choices. This will bring opportunities. You may feel like, however this emerges for you, that you want to treat money or your relationship to money or abundance differently than you have in the past. I think that'll come up for a lot of people. And really consider that. But that's what is emerging is material and spiritual prosperity, which could very well come from changes that you have chosen to make in your life or the way you handle, again, your abundance or prosperity or money. All right, the third card, what requires attention? This is something that may need care, healing, or focus, and the card is fertility. So the fertility card doesn't mean everyone's getting pregnant, right? You're not. Calm down. You're fine. Don't worry about it. You don't need 16 tests from the dollar store. Uh, fertility, or frequently, is just what's growing in you. So for me, fertility usually represents more like creativity. So what is it that you've been wanting to do? What's fertile in you that needs more of your attention? That's You know that. Nobody knows that more than you know that. Okay. Number 4 or 5, depending on what you're looking at, is the turning point. This is a moment or a decision that might shift the direction of the season, and this is harmony. Boy, there's a lot of strength in relationships here. It's interesting. Why? Because the turning point could be starting or ending a relationship. That harmony message, too, could indicate either choosing one path of compromise and getting along or another path of closing the door on something. Okay, what to release? This was right smack dab in the center. This is the solar plexus chakra card. So what to release? Old worries, hang-ups, issues with your self-esteem. We're releasing giving a shit what other people think of us. We are releasing judging ourselves too harshly. We're letting go of that. We're letting go of any old fears or attachments that could hold you back, and this card is a perfect example of it. All right, the next card. What to nurture? Something worth investing energy in, and the card is base chakra. So for the next 3 months, we're focusing on the root, staying grounded, staying centered, recognizing when we're not grounded so that we can pull our energy back and repair that, right? This is important stuff. Spending more time outside, more time in nature, more time with trees, maybe more time with meditation, but staying grounded. And where you may be by summer, with choices, with opportunities to change your situation in multiple ways. The card itself is choose wisely, which tells me that coming into the summer, you're going to have some options to make decisions that are better for you, perhaps for your family, and perhaps just for you personally. But this card reminds us that as choices come in, you have options, you have opportunities. It's a really good reminder to you to take a deep breath, to take the time that you need, and to make decisions that make sense for you. I've said this many times, but that old adage, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, applies so strongly to all of us in the sense of doing what you need to do for you and letting the chips fall. Don't muddy the water by making a bunch of decisions for other people or making decisions for you to make other people happy. Because if you're not happy, if you're not settled and stable, then other people around you won't be either. That's pretty simple, right? And I think that card's a good reminder of that coming into the summer. If you need to make a choice that takes better care of yourself, you do that. Quit making yourself miserable to make other people happy. All right. Christy's message for us this week is Your Love is Your Superpower, a brand new video from her. If you're paying attention to Christy's YouTube and her TikTok, she's putting out a ton of new material right now, and it's awesome. Lots of crime over at True Crime Squad. We're actually in trial coverage right now for the Corey Richards trial. But the defense and the estate had a humongous smackdown today, this morning, that resulted in them taking 24 hours off to get some things sorted out. So that's nice. Nice for me. Yeah. And then, of course, Christy's got all of her fun little prints over at Fidget Whimsy. Lots of meditations over at Planet Meditation. And that's it for Luminous this week. So I hope that you found something interesting there that you can lean into and have some fun with and think about. I thought the reading was interesting. Frankly, I was expecting something that might frighten me more, but that wasn't terrible. We'll take it. Yes. All right. Well, we did it. We came back. We got through a whole show. All is well. So I want to remind you guys that I am a professional psychic advisor over at one2listen.com, and you can find me over there every single day doing readings, healings, animal communication, energy work, sometimes just helping you to run through some options before you make a decision. Whatever you need, I am there for you. I am there daily. You can find me every day. And if you go over to One2Listen and you need to talk to me and I'm not present, just send me either a callback request or a scheduled call request, and I'll get right back to you. When you do that, I get a text that says, hey, user so-and-so is waiting for you. And if I'm in a spot where I can get logged in immediately, I will. If not, I'll get back with you as fast as I can. So that's a great way to do so. But thanks, Lilianne and Suzanne and everyone else that's here. I appreciate you guys a lot. I'm so glad that you joined me today and that we made it back. So I'll be back next week, same place, same time. Until then, please take good care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you over on the lines. This has been yet another production of The Katie Weaver Show here on 1-2 Radio, where we're changing the way you listen to the world.